my wizards. We are here today to talk about the Urza Lord High Artificer Primer. This is for you who have seen my primer and are like me and learn best through listening and interacting and within the gathering. And it is because of you that I will be creating a 5 episode video series as a means to guide you, the new or inquiring Urza player, through your deck building process. So, without further ado, let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to Moxfield. So this is my Urza Lord High Artificer Adaptive Control Primer. Now, that being said, the purpose of this video is to kind of summarize what my entire primer is about. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be splitting it up into 5 different episodes outside of this. And this is how I'm gonna do it, okay? Now, first things first, we touch on the introduction. Now, the introduction section, right, is for the players that have never heard of Urza Lord High Artificer, or maybe, they're interested in playing Urza Lord High Artificer but kind of want to know the feel of Urza. And so what I do here is I kind of give a brief summary of Urza, his mana cost, his abilities, and I also go over the reasons why you would want to play Urza and reasons why you would not want to play Urza. Now, it's important to know this because, there are some players that are looking for a more linear playstyle, and, there's players that look for a more adaptive playstyle. Now, Urza caters more to the adaptive style. It's not impossible to build Urza with a more linear strategy. In fact, later on in the series, I'm going to be creating decks that have a more linear strategy revolving around Urza. Now, with that being said, this build in particular is a control adaptive build. And so it's going to cater to more of those adaptive players. Now, that being said, we have here the reasons why you would want to play Urza. You can read through it more, or you can wait for my next episode. And I will also be going over reasons why you would not want to play Urza. Okay? Now, the second episode that I will be recording for you is defining our terms. Now, in order to play this particular build of Urza effectively, you should know how player priority and the stack work. Now, those two keywords are huge when it comes to playing this deck. And in order to, in fact, you know what? I played this deck and then I got to learn what those words meant by losing. I kept playing, I lost, I played, I learned. That's, I always look at losing as a learning opportunity. Now, that being said, had I actually known the concept of priority, the stack, I would have been much better off in those games. And so I want you all to have a better experience than me. And with that, I conclude my summary on the second episode, okay? Third episode, I'm going to be going over the deck construction philosophy. Now, this is going to be one of the most important episodes in my opinion, and the reason why is because I'm going to be going over kind of the mind, the philosophy into what I've been putting into how I've constructed this deck. Now, in order to play an Urza deck effectively, you need to know, or any deck, if you will, effectively, you need to know the mind and the philosophy that's gone into it. Otherwise, you'll see a card in the deck. Oh, what does this card do? Oh, I don't know. So you'd be playing with that. And yes, that it can be fun to figure out what a combo does, but when you're trying to play the most efficient, effective game of Commander, you kind of want to already know why the card is in your deck. And so that's what this section does go over. In fact, what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to be talking about my notable includes. And the thing is, I've playtested a lot of different Urza variants, and I've noticed that, a lot of times they would be lacking something. They wouldn't feel all that powerful compared to other mono blue decks. And so, yes, okay, there's key stacks pieces, but you run out of gas is what I've found out. We'll go over this more in this episode number 3. Um, Another part of this video that I'm gonna be opening up is keepable hands. In fact, that's one of the hardest things I find in Commander is when you look at your hand and assess, is this a good hand to play against this table? That's something to think about when you're playing in a competitive table. You have to consider your enemies, right? If you know yourself and not the enemy, you will win and lose half your battles. If you don't know yourself and you don't know the enemy, you will lose every battle. Now, that being said, so knowing yourself, knowing your deck is half the battle. Knowing your opponent's deck, however, that's where the real fun is. In order to play this deck super effectively, you need to know your opponents as well. Okay? And I will be going over all this in the deck construction episode. Now, the strategy. Now, the strategy in this deck, there's several avenues to winning, or there's several avenues to choking your opponents into submission. That's what this deck does. It's an adaptive, it's a control deck. You gotta play it if you're a bit of a control freak. Okay. Jokes aside, if you're gonna play this deck, you want to know what pieces you're looking for if you want to either win or if you want to choke someone. Now, that's what this episode's gonna go over. Pretty simple. But the cool, notable thing with this deck is that it's a win conless deck. There is no single card in this deck that you can look at and say, this card, this one card is gonna win me the game. This one card is gonna win me. No, that's not how this deck works. In fact, you know what? If you lose all these combo pieces, you can still find a way to win the game through sheer stacks and, aggro. This deck works like that. It's effective in that sense, especially in a competitive EDH table where a lot of strategies are not as creature-centric. Now it's starting to become that, but it's not quite there yet. So I definitely think that going the beatdown plan, if you really have to, is an effective way to go about this deck. Okay? So that's the strategy section. I also have this video primer section. In fact, that's where I will be uploading this video onto. Alright? Episode number 5. Let's talk about that. Episode number 5 is going to be about moving forward. I'm going to be making more primers. Actually, they're going to be more Urza-centric primers. In fact, I want this particular channel to start out with being very Urza-centric. And so, if you love all things Urza, I feel like this would be an amazing channel for you. And, that'd be amazing, actually. I'm going to actually come about a lot of different strategies revolving around Urza. I'm going to have just kind of give you a sneak peek. I'll be doing an Urza Eldrazi build. I'll be doing an Urza Poly Tyrant build. I will also be doing an Urza Turns build. Now, some of you may ask, Jedi, but I've seen these strategies, I've seen these primers in other content creators' channels. What makes yours special? Well, I'll tell you what. A lot of the content in this channel is really going to be Urza-centric. Primarily. It's going to start out that way. Of course, I'm going to expand and do other things magic related, but first and foremost, it's going to be Urza. And so I'm going to have a full Urza section. So if you want to come to this channel, if you're looking for all things Urza, this is the channel for you. Okay? And that's what I'm looking to make it. And so that's the value I'm going to be adding to this. Now, with that being said, it was a pleasure talking with all of you. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Toodles.